Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diane Doring, Chair of the DRI Foundation Women in Business Continuity Management Committee. On behalf of the committee, I want to welcome you to today's presentation, the latest in DRI's webinar series that looks at the challenges faced by resilience professionals and the strategies they can use to meet them. Today, we're going to be discussing the practices of mindfulness and how they can be used to navigate critical incidents. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who sent in questions when they registered. We'll try to touch on as many as we can over the course of the hour. Our expert today is Karina de Allicon, a Fulbright Scholar, Senior Manager of Enterprise Risk and Business Continuity, and my colleague on the WBCM committee. Karina has designed and manages Edwards Life Sciences enterprise-wide business continuity program, which encompasses emergency response, crisis and incident management, disaster recovery, and business continuity. As part of her role at Edwards, she has led recovery efforts at a time of business disruptive events such as Hurricane Maria and, of course, COVID-19. Karina is a DRI certified business continuity professional and certified risk management professional, a Department of Homeland Security, FEMA certified HSEEP exercise designer, and a UCLA certified mindfulness instructor. Karina, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Diane. A pleasure to be here with all of you.
Before we dive into the nuts and bolts, can you share with us an experience that you had with mindfulness and how you came to connect mindfulness with business continuity management and incident management?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would like to take a moment to debunk a few myths about mindfulness, some preconceived notions that I think might be keeping some fellow professionals away from a practice that can really help you optimize incident management. Mindfulness is a secular practice, so there's no particular way of sitting that we need to follow, no sitting posture or any particular clothes we need to be wearing. Before COVID, we continued to practice mindfulness in corporate America remotely because of COVID. But before COVID, we were meeting in conference rooms, sitting around a conference room table in chairs with our business outfit. So just to clarify, secular practice. Also, everything that I'm going to be sharing during the webinar today and as part of the course is based on scientific research. So it's not just stuff that Karina came up with or that she noticed along the way. It's based on research that shows how a regular mindfulness practice changes the brain, what we know as neuroplasticity. We used to think early on in our lives, the brain was pretty much set in stone, was not going to change until the end of our lives. Now we know this is different, and along our life with practices such as mindfulness, we can create new neural pathways. So secular practice, all based on scientific research. And importantly, in our field of incident management, what I'm going to be sharing is after the incident has been stabilized. So for example, right now, if in the room I'm in, there's a fire, I'm not going to be, okay, I'm going to meditate for a few minutes. No, I'm evacuating, of course, right away. After I evacuate, then when the fire has been put out, when the incident has been stabilized, then I can choose to leverage mindfulness to lower my stress, and instead of just reacting to the situation, decide what to do. So I just wanted to clarify that, and also make a quick note that English is my second language. So if I say receipt or anything that makes you like, why does she, just let me know and I'll try to rephrase it. So that's just to cover some of the myths around mindfulness. And now I'll be happy to share with you, I guess, my experience with the practice and why is there a connection between mindfulness and incident management. So just a quick sip of water, a mindful break. So my journey with mindfulness started, it was a personal journey in the beginning, and then it turned into a professional journey. I'm born and raised in Uruguay, Montevideo, Uruguay, South America. Unfortunately, I was raised during a very bloody dictatorship for many years. Many countries in South America went through these political upheavals. And as you can imagine, during a dictatorship, the entire country, the entire community is in an anxious state, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty. So I struggled with this for many years. I was awarded with a Fulbright scholarship to study in the US for my master's degree. And that's where I met my husband. And I was working at 20th Century Fox after I graduated from college. And we were living very close to UCLA, the University of California in Los Angeles. And my husband told me, you know, why don't you go there for free once a week? They have mindfulness drop-in sessions. You sit, they guide you through a meditation. It might help with your stress. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's go. And we went. And I'm going to be honest with you, I thought it was nonsense. I'm like, what is this? Why am I sitting here? I have things to do. I don't have time to just sit and do nothing. But there must have been something in that practice that resonated with me, because I did go back to work, to Fox, and for the next 2 weeks, every day I meditated for a few minutes mindfully. I think I said to myself probably something like, I don't think it's going to work, but whatever. I'll just do it for a few minutes every day. I'll just rest my eyes during lunchtime. What I noticed was that 2 weeks after I was practicing every day for a few minutes, I noticed a slight change. So this is what I remember that was kind of like a click. I received an email, a very angry email. I think we can all relate when we get those angry messages. And I was going to respond, and I paused, and I'm like, mental note, they're just having a bad day, let it go. And I noticed 2 weeks before I had started practicing mindfulness, the pause would not have been there. I was raised in a family with ancestors from Italy and Spain. Uruguay is mostly made out of immigrants from Europe. I was raised in a culture that is very reactive. Emotions are always right. Someone loves you, you love them more. Someone hates you, you hate them more. So reactivity, emotional reactivity was a value. I was conditioned that way. So this pause for my upbringing, for my conditioning, was a huge reveal. And that's when I realized, okay, there is something to this practice. It's not just that I can read research about it. I notice it within myself, you know? So that's when I took it more seriously. I took classes at UCLA for several years. I became a certified instructor with UCLA. After I became an instructor, I started teaching children mindfulness at a counseling center, children with neurological disorders like ADHD, OCD, autism. I started teaching educators in the city of Irvine. And that's when I realized a practice that began for myself, for my own stress levels, a practice that I was sharing with the community in general. I thought, you know, we manage incidents all the time. This is just part of our job at BCM. And I noticed there's many of these practices I could modify, I could adapt to help us navigate through COVID, through hurricanes, through a power outage. And that's when I made the connection and I started using these practices, modifying them and bringing them into corporate America, working with C-level executives, working with leadership teams, recovery teams. And it's been a rewarding journey, especially since COVID, which continues to be an active event that challenges all of us all around the world. So that's a bit of an overview of how the journey began from a personal standpoint, sharing with the community, and then the connection with incident management in BCM.
Thank you, Karina. I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us, and that makes a lot of sense and puts it into context. I'm really excited to actually dig into what is mindfulness. Can you tell it? Like, I understand the journey and the usage of it, but I think you have some more scientific information that you want to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. So mindfulness, what is mindfulness? First of all, why are we talking about mindfulness today? And we'll get into the details in a moment. A regular mindfulness practice helps us lower stress, increase cognitive functioning, increase emotional regulation, situational awareness, make better decisions, especially at time of a crisis situation. That sounds great. Let's start from the beginning. What is mindfulness? What is this tool that can help us achieve that? We can define mindfulness as the daily practice of noticing present moment experiences, noticing thoughts we're having, emotions we're feeling, sensations in our body, sounds around us. We notice these these experiences every day with equanimity and with kindness. And what does this mean? Equanimity is accepting the way things are. Now, it doesn't mean being passive, not at all, which we cannot afford to be, especially in our field. It doesn't mean, oh, well, things are as they are, I guess. It's not that. It's, for example, COVID is here. It's not going to go away anytime soon. With this present moment circumstance, how do we recover from it? How do we respond to it? That's equanimity, skillful action, not from a place of reactivity, but a place of acceptance, especially when certain variables are out of our hands, out of our control. And with kindness, because it's really hard. We don't talk about this enough. It's very hard to manage an event like COVID, in addition to managing team dynamics, if we're leading recovery efforts or if we're a part of the team, and our personal lives, our families, our friends. So giving ourselves a break, giving others a break, and taking every opportunity as a lesson we can learn. What's the gift within a huge obstacle? How can we turn a negative into a positive? So mindfulness, that's the practice of mindfulness. In a nutshell, noticing the here and now, showing up for our lives, which sounds easier. It's easier said than done, because just to give you a visualization, the body is in the here and now, always. The mind, not so much. The mind, the MO of the mind, is taking us into the past or into the future. It's remembering, ruminating, worrying about something we said we shouldn't have said, or something that somebody did, why they shouldn't have done that, or jumping into the future, catastrophizing, worrying yet again, planning. And we can live our lives this way. We can manage incidents this way, but it's not the best use of our time or energy. So the practice of mindfulness helps us, for example, if I follow the breath, I'm noticing the breath, I'm present, and oh my God, yesterday's meeting was terrible. I think I looked awful. Why did I say, oh no, hold on, I was noticing the breath. And oh my God, tomorrow, what's gonna happen with that big meeting? I don't have the PowerPoint ready. Oh no, noticing the breath. And it's about coming back to the here and now, coming back to the here and now. And there's a formal practice and an informal practice. And we need both. A formal practice of mindfulness is, like I shared earlier, it's a secular practice, just sitting in a chair, wearing whatever outfit we're wearing, typically closing the eyes, but if you don't want to, just looking down so you're not distracted, and noticing the breath or noticing sounds. And we try to do this in a quiet room, try not to be disturbed for several minutes if we can. This is the formal practice. The informal practice is, you could say to me, Karina, this sounds great, but when I'm in the middle of an incident and my boss needs something, I'm not going to be like, okay, give me 20 minutes. I'm going to go meditate on that. That's not, you could try it, but I don't think it'll have a good outcome. So the informal practice is, how do we summon mindfulness on the spot? In the middle of an incident that we're managing, how do we auto-regulate? How do we lower our own stress, lead by example, continue to influence without authority, no matter what the circumstances are? How do we do it on the spot? Mindfulness on the go, if you will. And this is important to do because it's important to have both. The formal practice is, to use an analogy, it's kind of like hitting the gym. You go to the gym, you work on your biceps. The informal practice is, I go to the grocery store and then I can flex those muscles, pick up the heavy grocery bags, not injure myself. It's very similar with the formal and informal practice of mindfulness. Formal, you sit, and we're going to try this later on in the webinar. We meditate together. The informal practice is in the middle of recovery. How do we leverage a mindfulness tool to make it go more smoothly? So that's a bit of the definition and a bit of the importance of the formal and the informal practice that helps us leverage mindfulness to optimize incident management.
And it seems like some of that practice can be very individual. And as you take us through how we can apply that and how that improves incident management, it seems like we come from our own place, but we bring that to the group. And I wondered if you could talk us through your experience and how that works as well. How does that improve the incident management, not only focusing on ourselves and practicing formal or informal, mostly informal at that moment, but then how does it improve incident management?
The reason mindfulness helps us all, not just me or you, all of us, all humans, improve incident management is because of how the mind works. We're all mammals, we're all human beings. In the course that we develop with DRI, we go into a lot of detail around scientific research, the brain. For the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to simplify that, but I do want to touch on why does it work because of how the mind works. What does that mean? It means the following. I'm going to share with you the 3 parts of the brain that really come to play when we talk about leveraging mindfulness practices for crisis or incidents, crisis situation or incidents. The brain stem, the limbic system, the prefrontal cortex. The brain stem is the part of the brain that has evolved the least, the reptilian brain, if you will. And this is the part of the brain where basic functions reside, such as breathing or sleeping, digesting. And this is also where the fight, flight, and freeze response resides, in the brainstem. Later on in evolution, mammals developed the limbic system. This is the mammalian brain. Within the limbic system, what we're going to focus in on is the amygdala. The amygdala, it's kind of like hitting an alarm button. So whenever there's a life and death situation, the amygdala hits the button, tells the brainstem, go into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. For example, let's say I'm in the jungle and there's a lion wants to eat me. Very, very quickly, the amygdala hitting that alarm, telling my brainstem, flee, fight if the lion pounces, or play dead, freeze. Very reactive, the amygdala, extremely useful in life and death situations. The problem is we don't live in the jungle. So most of our stressors, and many times during incident management, are not the lion that's going to eat us. It's that angry email that we get. A challenging conversation we need to have. Everyone in the EOC, everyone having different agendas, egos that need to be managed. Now, to the amygdala, stress is stress. It doesn't know the difference between the lion and the angry email or the EOC dynamics. It hasn't evolved that much. The reason mindfulness helps, this is an example, is because by doing something as simple as labeling what we're going through, for example, I'm in the EOC, everyone seems to be arguing. If I just to myself say, anger, I feel a lot of anger right now, just by doing that, I am deactivating the amygdala and activating the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO of the brain. As far as we know, it's only been developed in humans. It is where cognitive function resides. We access creativity, task management, decision-making, delayed gratification, all thanks to the prefrontal cortex. So by simply labeling anger, I am deactivating the amygdala, activating the prefrontal cortex, lowering cortisol, lowering stress, and getting a little space between what's happening around me, the stimuli, EOC dynamics, and instead of just reacting and just yelling with the rest of the team or saying whatever, it's like taking a step back, and I might choose to raise my voice, but I'm not doing it from a place of reactivity. I'm doing it from a place of inner stillness and completely aware of what I'm going to say and face the music if I need to. So that's in a nutshell why mindfulness helps us manage incidents more effectively, because we've all been through crisis management situations and automatically stress is going to increase. Of course, it's not business as usual. So this is why it's so important to make it a part of the incident management process so we can navigate an event such as COVID more effectively, making more skillful decisions.
And on that piece on decision making, it seems like mindfulness would help lead us to make better decisions. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Decision making, I'm sure you can all relate, it's very hard during an event for different reasons. First of all, because of the situation per se, the incident. A lot of unknowns, a lot of moving targets, information that's coming into the EOC we need to validate, contradictory information. We think we got the situation figured out, something new happens. I mean, COVID is unfortunately, it's been such a learning experience for all of us, because everything I'm sharing with you, I'm sure all of you are like, yep, been there, yeah, right? We think we know that this vaccine is going to work. Oh, it has a side effect. Okay, good to know now. I mean, always, every day, new information, very volatile. So making decisions during an incident, because of the nature of the incident per se, is hard, it's challenging. And on top of that, team dynamics, different agendas, different egos need to be managed. And many times, not only do we have to influence without authority if we're leading the team, but even if we're a team member, a member of the recovery team, in many cases, the community itself, our own families, might have been impacted. So you have to juggle a lot, and it's really hard to do this on top of staying on top of the incident, and many times in parallel running a BCM program. So it's very common during an incident that it's harder to make good decisions because cognitive distortions increase. Stress increases, which, remember, makes the amygdala hit the button. We go into survival modes, and we cannot think straight because the prefrontal cortex is not being activated. It's the amygdala freaking out. So we fall into decision-making traps. And decision-making traps, cognitive distortions, are they're kind of like optical illusions. You know, I'm in this room, which has been, it has been a quarantine COVID project for my husband and I, keeping us busy. We call it the Escher room, because if you know MC Escher, his artwork, this is all his art, it's all about optical illusions, staircases that seem to be going up or sideways or down, or you look at an image and it appears to be birds going one way, fish going the other. And that's what a cognitive distortion is. It's blurring our mind. It's making us see reality in a non-accurate way. It's a cognitive bias. So in order to, and one example of a cognitive distortion that I think we can all relate to during incident management are should statements. For example, we should have gotten more PPE. We should have seen this coming. We should have updated the pandemic plan more often. You should have done this. You should have done that. I should have done that. A lot of finger pointing, which adds no value at time of an incident, at time of recovery. It adds tremendous value as a lesson learned, of course, but when we're in the middle of managing the event, it's useless. And time and energy are limited when we're managing a disruptive event. So it's good not to waste our time falling into these cognitive distortions. So how can mindfulness practically help us? It can help us with a few tools, and I'd like to share just two of them, which can be used on the go. And then we'll go into a more formal practice. But with the example of should statements, this is how you break away from that cognitive distortion, by simply doing this. One conscious breath. Deep breath in. You can hold for a few seconds. Why does this help? Because it takes us out of survival mode. When we are fleeing from that lion, when the amygdala hit the button and we're running away, breathing is shallow, adrenaline rush, more cortisol. So if you're telling your body, breathe deeply, you're telling your nervous system you're safe. This is not life and death. Yes, this is urgent. Yes, we are attending to it now, but you can afford 5 seconds to breathe. So this tool, and you saw me, I don't have to close my eyes. I don't have to sit up. I'm just breathing. I'm with you in the room. And that gives me that space to, for example, speak up and say, okay, you know what, I'll make a note of the shoulds for the lessons learned, but why don't we go back to what we need to do today? What can we do now moving forward? Somebody in the room has to have the ability to be mindful and not reactive. And it can start with each one of us. And then it's a very, in a good way, a contagious exercise, because if you're leading by example, or even if you're a member of the team and you're centered and focused, other people will pay attention, they will notice. And as mammals, we resonate with each other. And if you're calm and in control, it will help the rest of the team regulate better. That's one tool that I wanted to share on the go. Another tool that could be helpful is doing this. I'm just scanning the room. Why does this matter? We're avoiding tunnel vision. When I'm doing this, I'm increasing situational awareness. Yet again, I'm telling my nervous system, not a life and death situation. No need to be running away from the lion. No, you're good. You're safe. Yes, this is urgent. Yes, we are going to attend to it right now. But regulating our emotions and coming back to a place of inner stillness and more stability to engage that prefrontal cortex to go out of survival mode and make a more skillful decision. These are just a couple of examples. The beauty of them is that, like I said, you can use them on the spot. You're just breathing or you're just scanning the room. It's about choosing to become aware, okay, I'm getting reactive, I'm really stressed out, let me use one of these tools and begin again. And giving yourself a break for having been stressed out. We're mammals, we're human beings, it's normal. We can always begin again. Mindfulness is always about beginning again.
And if we can bring the temperature down for ourselves, like you said, other people will pick up on that, and it will help bring the temperature down in the room, because as you've been describing, we can control how we react and how we react to others. We can't control how they react, but we can lead by example. These are great. I think you're going to take us through another practical tool in just a moment.
So the tool that I wanted to share with all of you for a formal practice is called label. Now remember, the formal practice is hitting the gym. Remember, working on your biceps. The informal practice is flexing those muscles when we're lifting the grocery bags. So we tried mindfulness on the go with breath, the one conscious breath, the scanning of the room. If you have a little more time, we're going to walk through it together now. 10, 15 minutes, it's a great practice because it gives you the opportunity to hit that gym so you can summon mindfulness on the spot. So I'll walk you through what the acronym label stands for, and then we can practice together. So the L stands for label. Remember, prefrontal cortex being engaged. The A stands for allow. Remember, equanimity, things are as they are. From acceptance, how do we act mindfully, skillfully? And this is an example of a tough emotion or thought we're going through. We label it, for example, anger. We allow it to be here. Whatever we resist persists. So if you say something, for example, Diane, that triggers anger within me, and you notice a shift and you're like, Karina, are you angry? No, I'm not. No. Many times denying what's here makes it grow bigger. So in the mindfulness realm, we try to accept whatever is here. That is the practice. We allow it to be here. So that's what the A stands for. The B is for breath, taking a breath. The E is for exploring in the body, how that challenging thought or emotion manifests itself. For example, if I'm feeling anxiety, my heart might be racing. If I'm feeling anger, maybe I'm clenching my jaw, tightness in the abdomen. So that's what exploring is about. And then the L, the final L, is for listening to sounds around us. So the B, the E and the L, the breathing, the exploring in the body, the listening to sounds, it's helping us steer away from here because the mind, it wants to keep doing the problem solving all the time, 24/7. And we need a break so that we can begin again and think straight and make healthy, good decisions. So that's what the B, the E, and the L are for. It's helping us hit the pause button. So the invitation is for now to try it out. And it's a personal practice, see if it resonates or not. It's just going to be maybe 10 minutes that we're going to practice for together, but that way you get a feel for what this tool is like. So close your eyes if you're comfortable. If not, that's okay. You can leave them open, but looking down so you're not distracted by what's happening around the room. We're going to begin by just taking a deep and slow breath in and a slow breath out. A few times at your own pace. Just breathing, calming our limbic system. We're safe. We're good. And then allow the breath to be natural. No need to manipulate it anymore. Just notice. Notice the breath in and the breath out. When breathing, we just breathe. That's all. Now the invitation is to notice right now if you are experiencing a challenging emotion and labeling it. And if you're not experiencing right now a challenging emotion, can you bring to mind a time, a circumstance in which you felt some frustration, some sadness, some jealousy, some anger, anxiety? It doesn't have to be the most challenging experience, just a moment in which you had to struggle through one of these emotions or another difficult one. And can you just give it a label? Just labeling very kindly. And can you allow this emotion to be here? Can you just sit with it for a few more moments? Try not to figure out why you're feeling this, what triggered it. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Can you just hold this emotion for a few moments longer? Just allowing it to be here. It's not who we are. It's just an experience. It's just part of life, part of being human. And now, can you shift your awareness to the breath one more time? And it might be helpful for you to pick a part of the body where it's very easy to notice the breath. Maybe you can notice breathing sensations in the nostrils or the mouth, the back of the throat. Or maybe it's easy for you to notice breathing on the chest or the abdomen, rising and falling with each breath. It doesn't matter what you pick, just choose one spot in the body where you can follow one breath at a time. Really inviting curiosity into the breath that we take for granted. Is the breath shallow? Is it deep? Is it long? Is it short? What do you notice? If and when the mind becomes distracted or says something like, "What is this? Waste of time. I don't get it. I'm bored." That's okay. This is completely normal. The mind thinks. All we need to do is notice thinking, label thinking, judging, worrying, whatever the mind is doing. Give it a label and then come back to the next breath, beginning again. And gently shifting the awareness from the breath to exploring in the body how this challenging emotion manifests itself. For example, if you're working with anxiety, is your heart racing? If you're working with anger, is your jaw clenched, tight abdomen? So what do you notice in the body right now? No right or wrong experience, just noticing. No need to strive for any particular outcome. Just tuning into the body. And if there's another sensation in the body, not related to this emotion, maybe you notice the body's hungry, thirsty, itchy, you can also welcome this experience into the practice, not a problem. The mind gets distracted, just notice thinking. And instead of following the stories the mind wants to tell, story time can wait a little bit. Just come back to the next body sensation. And finally, ever so gently, shifting the awareness from the body into the sounds around you. And we typically have sounds to work with. So right now, wherever you're sitting, what sounds can you notice? Any sounds inside the room you're in? Maybe a clock ticking. Maybe the sound of your breath. If you notice sounds outside the room you're in, you can expand your awareness. Maybe birds chirping, distant traffic, someone talking, a child playing. And the mind will probably have an opinion about these sounds. I like this. I don't like that. Why is that person so loud? Just again, notice thinking. And begin again by following the next sound. And listening, just listen. That's all. Taking a moment to acknowledge how you're feeling right now compared to when we first started meditating formally together. Maybe the mind is a little bit quieter. Maybe the emotion you were working with is softer. Maybe it has grown. Maybe it shifted into something else. For whatever is here, can you just accept it? And you can offer yourself kindness for whatever you've noticed and repeat in silence the following phrase or whatever variation makes sense to you. For whatever I am experiencing right now, may I hold this too with kindness and awareness. For whatever I am experiencing right now, may I hold this too with kindness and awareness. Noticing your body, sitting in the chair, couch, wherever you're at. Taking a couple of deep and slow inhales, exhales. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. And that was Label.
Karina, thank you so much for taking us through that exercise. I can only imagine that people during this challenging year have tried to practice something similar, but maybe didn't have the way to label it, no pun intended. But I think it was a really great exercise, so thank you very much. As we mentioned, a few questions came in when people were registering for the webinar. The first one is, can you tell us, how did you close the gap between mindfulness being perceived as that foo-foo yoga stuff to being mindfulness being recognized as a respected skill?
Thank you for the question because, yeah, this happens. It happens with some organizations. So I noticed, especially with C-level executives, and I bring them up, I bring the C-suite up because if it's from the top down, it's just easier to implement and to incorporate mindfulness into an existing DCM training and exercise program and into an existing incident management process. So what I noticed with C-level executives is the minute I bring up the scientific research, which we don't have time in the webinar, but in the course, we have a lot of research that we're going to be sharing with attendees, really breaking it down so it's easy to understand. And so that, like the example with Label, I notice with executives, when you bring up the research, when you bring up the way the brain works and how mindfulness helps us engage the prefrontal cortex, deactivate the amygdala, they get it, it clicks. They're like, okay, I want to learn more. Okay, yeah, I'm willing to try one quick 5-minute guided meditation out or mindfulness on the go. Okay, so I find that the research, the science behind mindfulness makes this a really good, strong business case. I also find with other executives, for them, it's really helpful to know that it is becoming more and more a part of the DNA of corporate America as a useful practice. So I bring up how Google uses mindfulness. It's part of their DNA, or Nike, or Goldman Sachs, or Apple. And that also helps them, many of them, understand, okay, it's reliable, but the business world is more and more prone to leveraging mindfulness to increase productivity, to boost immune systems, to just overall have less conflict in the workplace, happier workers. So I find that the research and using other examples for corporate America is a good aid for many executives to understand the value add of mindfulness practices. In our case, specifically to help us manage an incident more effectively.
Great. The next question is, how does one who manages the crisis and is also affected by the crisis balance the two?
That's a tough question because it's also a common challenge. I think all of us can relate to this. We're many times leading recovery efforts, or we're a part of the team, and we're just having a tough time staying grounded ourselves. So how can you be there for others? I think self-care is key. And there's an analogy that I like to use, which is pre-COVID, all of us were very used to air travel. Hopefully, sometime soon, more and more of us will begin traveling on planes again. But back in the days, back in the olden days, I think that's how you say it in English, when you would used to travel on planes, you would get in and the flight attendant would let you know at the beginning, they would brief you, and part of the briefing, the security safety briefing, was at some point in time, if there's a change in cabin pressure, oxygen mask will become available. Make sure to adjust it on yourself first before helping others. When we hear this statement, it makes sense. Nobody says, oh, what a selfish thing to do. No, if I can't breathe, I can't help you breathe. It's the same with mindfulness. If you're going through a crisis situation, you need to be there for others, but you're going through professionally and personally, you're in a challenging spot. Take care of yourself first. Do the conscious breath. Do the scanning of the room. If you have time, which is not always the case in incident management, but during lunch in the morning, if you have 10 minutes to do label, do it. Nurture your well-being, mental and physical well-being. Be the practitioner first, so then you can lead by example, influence without authority, and help others regulate.
Thanks for that. I really like the next question too. Do you have any advice for how to engage someone who is overwhelmed and shut down but needs to make a decision? This is a great question.
It's a great question because our field is cross-functional, as we all know, and we have to work with so many different stakeholders, and everybody's stressed out during incident management. Let's face it, it's hard. There are different tools you can use depending on the individual and depending on their level of stress. So it could be that the one breath, the conscious breath or the scanning of the room helps them, and you can help guide them through. Let's just breathe together. Yeah, good. That could help. In some cases, there's a lot of energy within our peer, our supervisor, whoever it is in the team, and they just kind of need to let that energy out. So another helpful tool is to go with them around the block, if you can, and just do brisk walking. This is mindful movement, and walk quick. Help them because they might be too much in their head and not noticing if they're going to bump into something. But, you know, brisk walking, mindful movement can really help get some of that nervous energy out and calm the limbic system so that they can think straight again. That can be a useful tool. In some cases, it's the opposite. The person is drained. We've been there ourselves. We've seen that happen to colleagues. They're drained. They don't want to move. They don't want to do anything. They just want to feel better. So you could do one mindful activity such as this. You can help them take a conscious sip, even if it's coffee. I hope it's not coffee, but if that's the mug they have, sit with them and just, okay, let's just take a minute to drink. Can you close your eyes? You don't want to, that's okay. Can you look down? Just slowly take a sip of your coffee. Can you smell it? Really leverage the smell of coffee. That's what they're working for, because it does help ground you. Smell helps ground you. And if you have more time to work with your colleague, you could do mindful eating. You can go to a room, just the two of you, and have a meal and encourage, we don't have to talk much. That's just, what do you want to eat? Pizza, whatever they want. Try to see if you can get it, and focusing on the food and just looking at it, smelling it, tasting it, taking pauses. Many times we're working on the computer, eating a sandwich, working on the computer. The next thing we know, we had our whole lunch and we didn't even notice it. So grounding ourselves in the here and now with mindful eating can also help short circuit automatic pilot for a lot of folks that are just stressed out, burned out, and need a little help creating that inner space and beginning again. So these are some tools you can use. And if they're open to try something as labeled, that's great. But typically you want to start with shorter, informal practices to ease them into what mindfulness is about.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're suggesting too that we can use natural things during the incident, right? We need to drink, we need to eat. So using that as a way to really diffuse the situation for others by helping them come through that. Thank you, Karina. The next question is, are there any specific mindfulness exercises that would be good to do pre and post drill?
So if you come to the course, we give you an entire mindfulness toolkit in alignment with Homeland Security's exercise and evaluation program, which is operations-based and discussion-based exercises. For the purposes of this webinar, I can tell you that typically for operations-based exercises, informal practice is the most helpful way of incorporating mindfulness. For example, the scanning of the room, the conscious breath, like you were saying yourself, Diane, drinking, because we're drinking during an incident or during an exercise if it's long, eating. It's helpful because during, for example, a functional exercise or a full scale, we're actually performing recovery strategies. So again, we're not going to go to a room and meditate formally, but in the midst of the exercise, we can definitely incorporate some of these informal practice tools. And then always check in with folks afterwards and see if they found value in it, and if it gave them some space from what they were doing, if they were maybe going on a detour, and if that breath, that scanning of the room, that conscious drinking helped them create a little space between the stimuli and their response. Now, for discussion-based exercises, you have the possibility, and it's encouraged, to try a formal mindfulness practice, such as label. Why? Because we all know tabletop exercises are many times long. We're sitting around the conference room table for many hours. We talk. Many times we need a little break to begin again. So the beauty of a formal practice such as label is that everybody can take the breather to notice how they're feeling, to self-regulate, and then to continue on with the exercise. So we can afford more time for a formal mindfulness practice in discussion-based exercises.
That's great. The next question is, do you have any recommendations for additional resources on this topic?
If your interest is leveraging mindfulness to optimize incident management, the course we're offering with DRI is the only one in the space. It's the first of its kind. And that's why we're so excited to offer it. Now, if in general, what I'm sharing resonates and you simply want to know more about mindfulness, all established colleges and universities typically have some resources you could use. But if you want to cut to the chase, look, Karina, yes, I'm interested in mindfulness, but I really want to dive into how to use it for incident management, how to incorporate it into an exercise and training program, then you should come to the course, because I'm sharing with you during this webinar an overview. We really dive into each one of these topics in the course. We have an entire lesson around a mindfulness toolkit that you can very quickly start implementing for operations-based exercises, for discussion-based exercises. We even have, as part of your courseware, pre-recorded guided meditation, similar to what I did with Label today, so that if you want to use mindfulness and you don't want to be on the spot of having to guide people live, you can leverage that courseware. You can leverage different lengths of meditations, guided mindfulness meditations for different tools, for different types of exercises. So if what you're hearing now is resonating and you really want to start implementing it right away for an existing training and exercise program, or if you want to begin integrate it into an existing incident management program in your organization, you will find a lot of valuable tools in the course we're offering with DRI.
Excellent. Our last question is, are you aware of any new legislative responses that need to be initiated at the global level to reform the practices to improve incident management?
I don't know about legislative responses, but what I can tell you from my standpoint is the way the world is going, as the years go by, we're going to have to be managing more and more incidents, more and more crisis situations. And yes, we can afford to not sleep for a day or two. Yes, we can not eat very well for a couple of weeks, work really long hours for a couple of weeks, but none of this is sustainable in the long run. It's just not. And I think what COVID has shown, has taught all of us, is that we take for granted our mental and physical well-being, and it very quickly goes out the window, and to restore it is challenging, especially if the event continues to be active, like COVID is. I think key institutions in our society need to make mindfulness part of their DNA. Government, education, the health system, and in the field of BCM, we need to manage incidents by leveraging mindfulness practices. We owe it to ourselves. We deserve, all of us professionals, we deserve to manage an incident effectively without compromising our mental or physical well-being. We don't need to. There are tools such as mindfulness that we can leverage. And more importantly, the beauty of it is we all know how challenging it is to walk through every scenario in a training and exercise program. It's not feasible. There will always be a new scenario that we didn't test. When you're training and you're learning how to use mindfulness for incident management, the scenario doesn't matter, because you are training your mind, you're reconditioning your mind to increase cognitive functioning and to lower stress for any scenario, no matter how challenging it is, no matter how hard, no matter how many times it changes on you. It's up to us to choose to manage incidents more skillfully with mindfulness being leveraged. And it can begin with something as simple as taking one breath.
And that's only going to become more and more relevant as we have to manage multiple incidents. As COVID showed us, fires didn't stop happening, hurricanes didn't disappear. We really need to take care of ourselves as we take care of others. Thank you so much, Karina. This has been a wonderful enlightenment and a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure to be here. Please take good care.
Thank you once again, Karina, for all the information, and for everyone who sent in a question. If we didn't get to yours, we'll try to answer it in a blog post for an upcoming edition of Drive, the DRI e-newsletter. Before we go, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the upcoming mindfulness workshop, the first of which will be held on June 7th and is currently open for registration. The one-day online course is a blend of live instruction, discussion groups, and short guided meditation, similar to the ones we did during this webinar. Topics covered include scientific research, cognitive distortions, mindfulness practices to avoid decision-making traps, and a mindfulness toolkit to help you integrate mindfulness into an existing BCM exercise and training program. You can follow the link on the screen for additional information or to register for the course. If you still have a question that we didn't cover, give us a call at 866-542-3744. A recording of this and all other DRI webinars is posted on DRI's website, drii.org/webinars. Thank you once again for your attention today. And thank you, Karina.